Well, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us. Jessica Fields and I are so excited to be hosting our first interview. And we got a rock star for our first show. And we wanted to introduce you to Elizabeth Ann Stribling-Kivlan.
Hi, everybody.
I call her EA, but most people call her Elizabeth Ann. Just for those of you who do not know who Elizabeth Ann is, for those of you who have been living under a rock for a little while, EA was the president of one of the leading real estate firms in New York called Stribling. And that's actually where I met her. I was an agent at her firm for about 14 years. And 1 year ago, Compass and Stribling merged. Compass acquired Stribling, and we became part of the Compass family. So I have known EA for 16 years, something like that now.
Brad, we were kids.
We were totally kids. I was 24,
yeah,
and basically right out of college, just a short stint into real estate, and I got to meet you right away, and it's been a wonderful friendship over these years, and I'm so proud to have you on our first show.
I can't believe I'm the first guest. I mean, that's first off, what an honor to be the first guest. Brad, obviously we've known each other since we were literally children, because I like to think we still are. We're successful and we're smart and we're polished and put together, but we're still kids at heart. And Jessica, what a dream to get to work with you now with 1 year at Compass, and to see the two of you come together as a team and bridging this like two companies together. I think that you're the really perfect model about how you learn to adapt and change, whether that be in real estate or in your family life or in whatever industry you're in. So I'm really glad to be here today. So thank you.
Well, perhaps we should have beta tested this maybe with somebody a little lower caliber, but we're so honored to have you here today. Just to kind of fill our viewers a little bit about what you do now, you were the president of Stribling for many years. It was an absolutely amazing firm. You guys were rock stars, and it was so wonderful to work for you. It was like family being there. And after the merger to Compass, you are now the senior managing director at Compass. You are one of the senior managing directors. In addition to that, you are very busy. You are on REBNY's, the Real Estate Board of New York's Residential Brokerage Board of Directors Committee. You're a committee member, but you also serve as the co-chair. On top of that, you're a proud owner of a couple of puppies. Mm-hmm. You do lots with arts and philanthropy. You're a world traveler. You have many, many hats. So it's incredible to have you here.
Yeah, it's funny, if you ask me what I do for a living, I can never really know. I do so many things, but I have so many passions. And so I firmly believe that it's really wonderful if you have the ability to wake up every day and say, like, first off, thankfully I'm alive, but like most importantly, do what you love to do. I think we're in really, really difficult times right now. And I think there's a lot of perspective to be had to look back on, but also it's very easy to look at the past and sort of romanticize it in a very sort of way, like Midnight in Paris way. But you can also look forward to the future and say, like, how can I do something that I love, things that I love to do, and how can I bring those all together and do them? And I get to do that at Compass. I may not be the president of a firm anymore, but to me, the title was sort of meaningless. It's what I want to do is I want to get up every day, live my passion, live my dreams, work in, I think, the greatest city on earth. I mean, I'm a fifth generation New York City kid, so I really, really love New York. But to do what you want to do, but get to work with incredible people. So I have a lot of hats, but I'm glad I have so many hats.
Well, I've always been under the impression that when you're doing something that you love to do, it never feels like work. And it sounds like you live that same philosophy.
100%. I say this often, barring extraordinary mental illness, happiness and perspective is a choice. Mm-hmm. I can look at what's going on right now and feel like, oh my God, like, what do I do? Do I run away? Do I go hide in the woods? Or do I say, all right, I have to face this. And if I'm going to have to wake up every day and, I would do anything to hug my mother this Sunday. I would love to. It's not going to happen. I have to accept that is reality. And maybe the fact that we actually communicate electronically 83 times a day, which we really do, but we work together, it's actually created us to have a far more meaningful relationship than we probably would have if we were running past each other in the office. So I look at it in the sense of take what you can get out of this. I mean, you guys have kids, I don't have kids, but I was talking to a friend the other day, and how amazing that you guys have the time to spend with your kids. Like, you will probably never have that ability again, right? And it's going to create a bond that's unbelievable. So you can look at it as like, oh my God, how do I handle this? Or how do I look at this and say, I get extra hugs during the day.
I definitely need to add a little bit of that perspective into my harder days, today being one of them. Brad and I have sympathized with each other at moments about, there's been so many wonderful benefits about being home. And then, there's hard moments, those hard days where you just think, right, I have to think of the positive right now.
It's the only way, right? If you don't laugh, you'll cry your eyes out. So
Absolutely. Kind of that seems like a great segue into, you're talking about your mom and talking to her a zillion times a day. I mean, obviously you guys are working hard in this business and talking and working with people on, the executive level. Give us a little bit of a feel for what a day looks like for you right now. What are the kinds of things that you guys are talking about and doing, and how are you working along with some of these other executives like Robert Refkin and Rory Galad and those who are involved in the sort of management of Compass and Rebney?
Yeah, the beauty of Compass is it's very easy to look at Compass and say, oh, you're a very large company. We are. We have a lot of people, but we're very small also in the sense of culture and community and family. Rory and I are constantly in communication with each other. I was on the phone with Robert, a couple days ago, talking about the markets, how we can support our agents, different things that we should look at, how that we, during these times, what's the most important data that we can provide. So the beauty of a company like Compass is that you have access to all these incredible minds, and there's a real sort of brain trust going on. Mm-hmm. I think if someone said to me about a normal day, like my normal day isn't normal, but there is a constant, and I start every day off with a 45-minute call with all the regional sales managers. And it's really wonderful. So today, we talk about, pressing topics going on. We talk about the markets. We talk about things we need. And then today, I ended the meeting by facilitating a 7-minute meditation that I led, so that we could start the day sort of shedding our stress out of our muscles and our minds. And then we could go on and be as productive as we can be for the agents and for those that count on us to get through the day. The people who we work with, you guys are going through extraordinary times, as is everyone else in the world. I'm talking segmentedly about this, right? And we need to be able to help coach you and help you on an emotional level, on a physical level, on a personal level, on a professional level. So it's important that we all be aligned together and that we have a support system. So that's for me, I love it so much. Going into this crisis, we didn't do that every day. And I have to say, I long for the day that I live in NoHo. I long for the day that I can leisurely stroll around Cooper Square and I can go into the office every day. But there are parts of this that I'll miss. And one of them is the fact that I probably spend more time talking to my peers than I normally would get to do because we're so busy.
Yeah, totally. I think you're definitely in a very unique position right now, having both sort of the pulse on sort of the kind of the management level of this business, and then also having your pulse on the agent level of the business, like being able to really get yourself integrated into both and share that knowledge and that breadth of information that you have with both sides. That plays into being a great manager in and of itself.
I think, when I went to college outside of Boston in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I had a lot of friends who, UPS has a really good managerial program, or they did have a very good managerial program. I don't know now if they still have it. But during the holidays, they required every employee, no matter what you did, at some point, or within some time of the year, they had to drive the truck. So they had to go. So my friend Kate, who still works there, she has a pretty high level job at UPS. When she first started there, she could barely reach the pedals of the truck, right? She's this tiny person. And but for her, it was such a defining point about the company. And for me, it was always been very impactful to me because I thought, okay, if you want to be really good at what you're doing, you can only be the best version of you. If you're a part of the community, if you're not a part of everything going on, how can you manage or lead? So like, I never had a private office. I always sat with the brokers. I love that. That's how it works at Compass. That's what I love so much about it, because we're all in this together. And if you don't know what part A and part B and part C is doing, and you're in an isolated tower, I don't think you can be successful at it. I think it's just a different way of doing things.
I think maybe you should go on that reality show. I don't remember the name of it, where they take like the CEO and they have them dress them all up in a get-up, and then
Undercover boss.
Yeah, exactly. Undercover boss.
Well, she was that way when we were at Stribling. EA would always, when I was on the Uptown office on 924 Madison, my office was up on the 5th floor, and at least once a week, EA would come by and just walk up and sit down with us, and she'd, work from one of the desks up there and kind of pop in and see how we're all doing and just kind of exchange, stories about our lives. So she was the undercover boss, even back then.
I guess so. I love the people I work with so much. On our first call, I mean, I got emotional. I started crying, and I don't care publicly if people see emotion. I think that it's so important to emote in business. You can be a much better business leader or just person if you let it out. And I miss you guys so much. I mean, you realize that going to work, you see the people you work with more than you see your own family, right? So it's a safe environment. It's probably an environment where you may be more of yourself in some ways than you are at home. And I miss the camaraderie, and I feel very supported by it. And it took me a while to adapt to knowing that I could feel just as supported through a video camera.
Well, Jessica and I can definitely relate. Jessica is my work wife, and I talk to her about 37 times per day. And we're our families, we all know each other. We had a Zoom call this morning before we were speaking to you now, and my daughter Scarlett, who's just under 2, came and sat on my lap and joined our meeting because she's one of our colleagues as well. So it's nice to be family and to be close, and it's so wonderful to have all these tools that we didn't have a long time ago. I mean, when I started in 2004 working at Stribling, we used, I think it was called AS400 or
AS400.
It was basically like a black screen with green writing. You needed to know, it was like DOS. You needed to know the codes to get the listings, and we had Palm Pilots where we would beam things back and forth to each other. So we've come a long way now that we're, hundreds of miles apart from each other right now and Zooming on a call. And that's something I wanted to speak to as well, and kind of see what you can highlight as far as what the industry has changed in the past 15 years or so.
Oh, it's so funny. I mean, I think so. My mother sold an apartment on the way to me being born. So real estate's obviously been a real part of my life for like minute. So I started in real estate in 2001. I mean, I think about the fact that we barely had the internet. You had like a sort of quasi website. People didn't work certain times. If you couldn't get in touch with them, you couldn't get in touch with them. I remember when people refused to give out their cell phones. I mean, there were so many things. People used to say, "Oh, I don't check email." And it's like, oh. And then I think, but you look back and you think, wow, I mean, people were transacting hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate, but somehow you weren't connecting with people or communicating with people. You could go a whole weekend without talking to people. So I think that we've had all these technological advances. I think for a long time it was a little bit clunky and there may be too many and we didn't actually know how to use them. I think now we may have gotten to the point where because of the situation we're in, we've gotten to a point where we're learning to streamline how we use our time. And I think that how we use video calls, how we tour things, how we view things, how we interact about things. And the fact now that literally I can do anything I want from this device, whether that be pay someone, pay my mortgage, or buy a house. I mean, it's remarkable. You sort of think, what next? Mm-hmm. It's like the whole point. Remember when Google came out with Google Glasses? Everyone thought it was crazy. I think you're going to see some, listen, it was a weird thing to be walking around with, but it's not so far-fetched in the future. Like the way AR will come in and virtual reality and seeing things. I think it was maybe a little bit too early for itself.
Well, we definitely have felt like you know, for all the awful components of the pandemic, and there certainly are many, the new reality of this being a format in which we communicate with people has actually been almost very freeing in some ways. Because for a long time, Brad and I have talked about trying to do video with clients. And, you know, we kind of get to this point where we say, well, you know, we have to think about, you know, scheduling the videographer at the same time that our clients are available. And what about the weather? And what about this thing? And it's going to cost a lot of money. And we, you know, we try to set these things up. And then, you know, there's a whole bunch of issues that kind of get in the way. This new world that we live in, where we can get on a call with you like we are now via Zoom with very little hesitation or scheduling, and record it so that other people can appreciate the information that we're sharing, I think has been very freeing in terms of the way that we can, like you said, in some ways, like this is almost like a way of saving time, right? Because we can take what we're doing, we can share information, record it, send it to other people. They can watch it on their time when they're available. And it really changes the dynamic that we all have with each other.
Yeah, I think also, which is so interesting you say that. I mean, because I think for a long time, we were all texting with each other or emailing. And I think that there's so many nuances and how your cadence comes out and sort of the emotion behind it. You can read, the most amazing thing about any language is you can read one sentence, and depending on how you say a word, you can completely change the meaning. Something can seem very offensive. It can seem sad. It can seem happy. It can seem exuberant, whatever it might be. But the fact that we are using video again, one, it's such a more personal thing. And you can see like human reactions, and you can see sort of cadence. There's something really wonderful about it. We joke, you know, how before this, we're all on our phones mashing about, but now we're actually looking at people. So that's been a surprising part about this to me in a very, very wonderful way.
And now we know what kind of pajamas everybody wears too.
No, although I don't.
Well, I'm impressed that Jessica's not wearing her muumuu today. I was a little bit upset by not seeing it, but it's okay.
I don't wear pajamas during the day. Actually, I'm wearing jeans right now. Someone said to me the other day, I don't even know what denim feels like anymore. I do get dressed up every day for work. I feel like I have to. It's like my wife worked from home for years, and she got dressed for work every day. She actually had a colleague at her company that would get dressed and walk to the subway and walk back. Because to them, that was like their starting the day. Right. And then they would start working. So whatever works for you. But I would, you know, it's funny, I own some stock in Lululemon I bought a long time ago, and I was looking at it the other day, and I thought to myself, wow, it's doing really well. I can't believe that. But then I realized that athleisure wear is really, you know, everyone needs more of it because they're wearing it all out.
Yeah, that's why I don't have my muumuu on today, because I need to go deep into the muumuu purchasing department. I'm running out.
I saw an article today that people are panic buying Pelotons. So there's definitely a trend for staying at home and getting comfortable. And kind of
$300 purchase, a Peloton.
They're not cheap.
I looked into one, by the way, so I do know.
How do you see, like, kind of in this framework that we're talking about, this sort of new reality of the digital, virtual component that we have, how do you see that impacting how we sell homes? What do you think the future of that is?
I think there's sort of two ways. First off, we're going to have to phase back in. Phase 2 in New York State will be phase 2 as real estate brokers. So we'll have all the social guidelines and social distancing. But I think that's sort of just the beginning of it. I think we will start, I think it's about use of time. I think people, have to see a home, but they will probably see it virtually before they go in. I think there'll be a lot of looking at things electronically. But I think what that will also do is it will also allow markets to get much bigger, because suddenly you don't have to fly to San Francisco to buy. You can do that electronically. I also think it will increase the need for a broker or an agent. Because, I mean, I saw someone buy something recently from a virtual tour, but they were working with an agent they trusted and that they had a relationship with, and they believed was the expert. And I 100% will say it's a Compass agent. They are the expert. They know this specific segment of this market in California really, really well. And the person felt really, really comfortable because they felt to themselves, you know what? I may not physically be able to feel the space, but I have someone walking me through it multiple times, telling me the positives and the negatives, coupled with a certain technology that we're providing. I think you'll start to see more of that, especially on the investor level.
Do you think that anybody will buy? Do you think that there will be a trend to buying property sight unseen? I know that there's been talk about that. Brad and I aren't convinced that that will really take off, but
I think it depends what you're buying for.
mm-hmm.
I think there's been a real rise in this concept of iBuyers around the country, which is people buying homes, putting a little bit of money and flipping them. I think the people who buy sight unseen are going to be people who, one, have to move for like specific reasons. Like I have friends who are in the military. I went to a big Ross school. They'll buy sight unseen often because they just know the budget. They know they're coming in. They're really, they know they're going to be there for a certain amount of time. They'll buy. There are a lot of investors I know who, for the right deal, don't care because it's all about a cap rate, and so it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter as long as you're getting the cap rate. It's meaningless.
Well, I love what you said about how the digital world can make things easier for brokers and easier for clients, can see properties without physically going to see there. And that speaks to your earlier point about it really increasing efficiencies. Mm-hmm. So we're not wasting our time or the buyer's time or the seller's time for that matter, especially when people are worried about their safety. And we're kind of pre-qualifying and pre-screening who the serious buyers are. I think that's going to help transactions in general. It's also going to help agents be able to facilitate more listings at once if they're not constantly running around. So I think this digital push that we've been seeing anyway in the market has just been accelerated because of the COVID pandemic. And I do believe that it's going to have really positive effects for our sellers and also for our buyers as well. So I think this is positioning the whole market to be a lot more efficient and a lot more productive.
What's so funny, so Rebecca and I have a house in Litchfield County in Connecticut, which we're selling, and we are deciding where we're going to go next. So there's a whole sort of geographic area where we're considering going. And so and obviously real estate is my hobby, so I just read about it all the time. Rebecca says, why does one have to watch so many house hunters when they're looking at houses all day? Who doesn't want to look at a good episode of House Hunters, right?
Of course.
But so it's been funny. So I read all the descriptions that people put up, and I'll just negate. We're people who have to have a formal dining room. We actually eat at a dining room table every night, and it's something really important to me. So I'd be reading all these things, and you read from the description, you really can't get it. But I found from when I'm able to look at something with either a Matterport or a virtual tour or a video and feel like I'm walking through it, there are a lot of houses that I would, one, have gone to see it and just instantly walked in and said no, or ones that I would have never considered that the tours actually, I'm like, oh my God, I really like that. I didn't realize it could do that. So it actually, the greatest luxury you can have in life, the greatest luxury is time. So if you can get time from this, what better?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the idea of the video component is more than just a video of the rooms that everybody can see in a picture. There's so much that goes into your understanding of a home and where you want to live that has to do with what does the street look like when you're walking down the street? What does it look like when you walk into the building, or the stairway going up if it's a walk-up building, or the elevator, or how you do your laundry if there's a communal laundry room. Those are all the things that typically never made their way into pictures or videos, but that we think is what is going to help us sell property and help to streamline that process. Because like you said, if you can't envision yourself being in that property, you may not even go see it in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really funny. So we moved in last year in the city, and when we were looking for apartments, what everyone else features is not actually what I care about. I mean, I know real estate fairly well. I know what street I want to live on. I care about light, but for me, the size of the bathtub is like the most important thing. Like Rebecca and I love soaking tubs, and that's something really, and no one shows the tub. So when you're on a virtual tour, you can actually see it. And so it's an interesting thing. You never know. Someone like me who cares about a bathtub, there are other people who solely will care about where the washer and dryer is placed, or how to, if the stairs are too narrow, or there's somewhere to put the stroller, whatever it is. And we can't make that decision for them. So maybe some people said to me, well, what if it shows the bad grout? They're going to see the bad grout when they come in anyway. So how much does it cost to replace grout, right? And someone said, oh, well, what if it shows the defect in the house? But you're going to see that in person anyway.
Right.
So, I think that there are arguments against either, just there are easy ways to argue against it, but what I wouldn't do for more, in normal, everyday, regular life, it's so much better if I could have that extra 20 minutes to hang out with my friends or see my niece or nephew. I mean, that's a dream.
I love this question. And I think, Brad, going forward, this should be one of our interview questions is, what is the one item that sold you on your home that you live in? Because I bet that it's not what the typical answers would be. At least in my house, the thing that sold us was the basement. And whoever shows pictures of the basement, but we have a finished basement and it's got like 8-foot ceilings. That's not very common, but that did it for us.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. We talk about real estate is obviously it's a commodity, a financial commodity. But for me, it's also a super emotional commodity. And people buy houses for the strangest reasons. You never know. I mean, I know someone who bought a house because it reminded them of their childhood house.
Mm-hmm.
I just walked in and felt like it smelled like her childhood home. Smell is a very important thing. So it's probably actually the most impactful on your emotional. The most amount of emotions are that come from different sorts of smells that they evoke. So you just don't know what it's going to be. So I think that it's interesting that you bought the house 8-foot ceilings. See, do you use your basement?
Yeah, that's why we bought it, because my husband is an artist and he turned the basement into an art studio.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were looking for places that had that possibility, and this one already had it. Didn't have to dig out, a couple feet worth of dirt down there. It was already done for us. So yeah.
So,
Brad,
yeah,
I'm curious to know of yours, Brad. What is the reason that you bought your house?
So this actually leads me to my next question, which I just thought of. So yeah, you were mentioning the smell of the house, and that's definitely something that's tangible. It puts you in the actual space. And, I bought a house out in Bed-Stuy, and I was really drawn to the backyard, but it was standing out there in the light and feeling the warmth and feeling that, spring day when I first saw my house. And I'm curious, how you think that lacking public open houses, where a lot of times there are a lot of people there's a lot of energy, how that's going to affect the market. Because when I went to my first open house, to the house that I ended up purchasing, you could tell there was a lot of energy, a lot of activity in the air, and there actually turned out I was one of 7 people who put an offer on that property. So what are your thoughts on that aspect of the transaction side?
Well, yeah, I always say, when if you have 10 requests for showings, if they're pretty stacked, people, obviously you're sort of creating an auction-like experience. Everyone's coming in, it's just like an open house. You see the amount of people who are interested in it. That being said, I can tell you personally, I've never bought a house or an apartment that I've ever gone to an open house. I've always bought I bought some property off of paper. I've been doing this a long time. I have vision and I can see things. I bought a new development in Brooklyn, and they showed me the floor plan, and I just said, sold, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I think that it'd be hard to replicate that. But at the same time, markets will bear what the markets will bear. And even without that open house and a lot of people being there, Brad, there still were 7 offers. And I still think there'll be 7 offers, because for the right property, New Yorkers are very, very practical and they're very smart. And I think that it's very rare to undersell something in New York City. People can sniff a bargain out a mile away and pounce on it. So absolutely.
Just to speak to your point about the market, we wanted to speak a little bit about the trends that you're seeing in the market now. I know we've had setbacks in New York City in the past. We've had September 11th, we've had Sandy, we've had the 2008 financial crisis. What do you see? This is obviously a very unique situation, and it's pretty much unprecedented. Where do you see the market now in relation to those events, or do those events not really even affect where we are now?
Yeah, it's really easy to say, oh yeah, it's like, in some ways I can say it reminds me of 9/11. In some ways, because you saw a real flight out of the city in 2001. You saw people going to, Long Island, Nassau County, Suffolk County, wherever that might be. But then you saw them come back within like 6 to 18 months. There's something about the city that it's vibrant. New York will come back. It's just going to be a time where there's a setback. After post Lehman, a lot of money was lost. The stock market plummeted. I mean, people's net worth went to zero. I mean, people were affected by Madoff. I mean, there are a lot of things, right? This is an interesting scenario because if you look at the stock market, it's still pretty high. Interest rates are super low, but you have huge amounts of unemployment. But we don't know how much of the unemployment is temporary unemployment. I mean, there are all these unknowns. That being said, yeah, numbers are down. I mean, you're seeing a much smaller amount of, and I think once the stay in place is lifted, I think then you'll see a real change. That'll really explain what's going on. But I see people out there looking for deals.
Yeah, we've been noticing that as well. I mean, Jessica and I have a couple of Compass coming soon. So they're basically off-market properties that are being previewed before we list on the general market. And we are getting a lot of inquiries on a couple of our properties. So there is demand out there. I think the key is going to be finding out what the supply side looks like and where the demand is. I mean, we don't know what that equilibrium is going to be and how long it's going to reach that. And I don't think anyone really has a crystal ball, but have you guys had any kind of discussions about where you feel the trend might be moving, or is it too?
I think we look at it in this sense. Inventory is historically low right now. I mean, obviously, a lot of people pull things off the market. You're seeing inventory hover around 5,000, which is low. That being said, people took things off the market, but will they come back on the market? We have to remember that the majority of New Yorkers have a pretty substantial amount of money invested in their homes, whether that be 20% down on a condo or 40% down on a co-op or 15 to 30% down on a house. We're not as leveraged as other places, so people have the ability to hold things longer mortgage rates, etc. So I don't know if you'll see as many things come back on the market. I apologize. I have horrible allergies, and it's a new life for me living in Connecticut. So I think we'll have to see where that goes. I mean, look, I've been watching the contracts go through. The people are saying, I'm going to come in and I'm going to get 50% off. The average negotiation I'm seeing is 1 to 4%. So, I think that people are scared because uncertainty is hard. I always say to people, when you hear a story, it's not like, you know what, one day I went to an apartment and I overpaid for it and I had to have it because everyone else was buying. You hear people say, you know what, in 2012, I decided to buy at the lowest part of the market and the neighborhood changed drastically. So for me, if everyone's buying, it's at the time to buy. I think being a unicorn is really important. It's like buying stock when markets crash. So there is a pause in the market. We'll have to see what happens, but there's still 8.5 million people in New York City. And if some people leave New York, there are other people who've always wanted to live in New York, and maybe they'll get a little bit of a deal for a couple of years on that. And that will fuel people's, that will fuel a sort of new amount of people in New York. So I think that New York is, to me, the greatest city in the world, and there's only a finite amount of it that you can own. And a finite amount that you can build. So I have to say that although we're uncertain of where the market's going, I think that we'll have a better idea in the next quarter.
Being that you manage so many agents, have you heard of agents out there doing interesting things at the moment? With all this uncertainty, sometimes people get very creative. Are there things that you're seeing that are happening, or in conversations that you've had with other people that you say, wow, I think that they're really well positioned, or they're doing something that you think is pretty thoughtful?
You guys are doing really interesting things, by the way. I think it's really well. No, I do. I'm not just saying that because I'm on this call. I've thought about this since day
We
one.
only interview people that will sing our praises. That's the key criteria here.
You're having honest conversations, right? And I think that's what's so important. You have to have honest conversations now. They may not be the best. They may not be easy, but news is news and you need to hear it. And you're keeping people educated. The most important thing we can do right now is, one, support the people around us. And Jessica, I mean, talk about someone who's doing something heroic and who's doing something that's, when you talk about people doing interesting things, I think you're doing something interesting. I mean, what you've done and the amount of money you've raised to help the people who are literally fighting for our lives, and it brings me to tears, Jessica. I think that to me is interesting because it's you putting the community and the good of New York before anything, before business. And that to me is far more exciting than any type of marketing that you could do. I think the time now is to come together as one and do what you can do to support those around you, whether you can be like you to raise over $100,000. I mean, that's insanity. Or at least you buy one meal or you make one phone call to tell someone you're thinking of them. That's what we need to do now. That's what's interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, I have to give a plug for Brad because honestly, without having a partner to kind of manage the day-to-day of our real estate business over the last few weeks, I think I might have been losing my mind. But yeah, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And I think that, you know, we are in such an unprecedented moment that that maybe thinking beyond business is really the way to go.
Yeah, when are you going to be able to do that again? And
Yeah.
who's to know, you know, the impact, you know, especially for those of us who are entrepreneurs or those of us who are independent contractors, whether that be real estate or marketing or creative consultants. The most important thing you can do is have a sphere of influence. And you're not going to have a sphere of influence by sitting behind a screen and typing and not responding. You're going to have one by connecting virtually like this, picking up the phone. I wrote a handwritten note to someone the other day. There's a ton of ways you can do things. And I think that that's what you have to do, because when we come out of this, people are going to remember who took the time to call them and to reconnect. I've been amazed at the people who've reached out to me. It's really been incredible for me and rekindled friendships that I had lost. In some way, that's a really wonderful thing about it. And I think it's just it's an interesting way that after this we're gonna look back, and I think it's gonna expand relationships.
I think the phone call is finally getting its day in the sun again. You know, after so many years of sort of impersonal texting and, you know, messaging and this and that, the simple phone call and hearing somebody's voice in real time is really, I'm glad to see. I feel like as real estate agents, we were always into the phone call, but everybody else maybe had abandoned it.
Yeah, it's funny. I think about, you know, the late 90s, and I'm somewhere in my high school years at Chapin on the Upper East Side, and I would be sitting on the kitchen. I grew up in a brownstone. I'd be sitting on the kitchen floor, like on the phone all night long. And then now, if you said to me 2 years ago, would you talk on the phone? I'd just sort of look at you with disdain. But now I'm doing it again. And it's, you know, the funny thing is, you know, you have kids who are doing it now. I'm sure your kids never made phone calls.
Oh no, we've unleashed monsters in my children who now have every family member's phone number. And unfortunately for their grandparents, they're getting bombarded by phone calls like every 10 minutes because each kid calls independently.
I'm sure 2 years ago they would have dreamed that the grandkids would call them that much. So what are you going to do?
Right.
Yeah, the amount of connection that we've been able to have with these, with the relatives these past couple of weeks has been truly off the charts, and really, I don't think I've ever talked to my father this much in the past, 40 years as I have in the past 6 weeks. So there's definitely some silver linings there as well.
Love it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, before we let you go, we really, really appreciate your time, but I just want to ask you a couple of questions. What are you most looking forward to when the quarantine lifts and you're back in New York City? What are you most excited about?
Oh, I want sushi so badly. It's so badly. I live for a spicy tuna roll. I live for sea urchin. Like I love it. I think that's part of the reason I live on Cooper Square. There's amazing Japantown in the East Village. I want sushi. That's really what I want.
And one last question. I'm actually stealing this one from Rory, the manager of all the New York managers and agents, that he was asking, I noticed that at the end of every interview, you know, what are you doing for fun while in quarantine? And I know personally that you've been playing an instrument. So
yeah, so I'm not very good at it. I have my banjo back there. I actually broke a string the other day. I am working on the banjo, which is like, it's been very hard. It's very hard to take online banjo lessons, but I'm working on it and I love it. So that's what I've been doing for fun. And we also are playing, wait for it, competitive badminton in the backyard, which I know seems super lame. By the way, I'm either just old or it's a real workout we found. So unfortunately, it's like a little gross out today and it's gotten a little cold. But when the weather comes back, that's what we're doing for fun. I mean, fun is, it's, you know, I was watching a lot of TV, but I'm not really watching much TV anymore.
I'm pretty sure badminton is like the gateway drug to curling.
On to more. So I can't believe I'm saying this. I've gone curling. I have. There's this amazing hotel in the Adirondacks called The Point, and it was a former Rockefeller estate. So they have curling. By the way, you know, we look at curling and we're like, oh, ha ha ha, it's not a sport. You should try curling. It's very difficult. Those stones are super heavy. I mean, the first time I let one go, I went like flying across the ice, you know. I have done curling. I've also done ice fishing. I've done a lot of weird sports along the way.
It's amazing what you uncover when you have a candid conversation. You know, I never thought that we'd be talking about curling and ice fishing, but it's good that one of the managing directors at Compass has curling skills.
Yeah, well, one day maybe I'll include a photo of me curling, but it's worth a shot to try.
This is all good fodder for our next interview when we can pepper you with questions about all the oddball sports you know how to play.
Yeah, well, I saw a little highlight at one point. I mean, I've done a lot. I feel my whole thing is, listen, why not try something once? You never know. You might really find something you enjoy.
Absolutely.
Well, Elizabeth Ann, thank you so much for coming on our show, the Bateman Field Show, I guess we'll call it. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you, and we look forward to doing this again in the near future. So I guess until then, good luck with your competitive badminton.
Thank you.
And
thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Look forward to seeing you in the flesh in the hopefully not too distant future.
I can't wait.
Maybe for a sushi dinner.
Oh, please.
In a formal dining room.
Yes, I would love it all. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, EA.
Bye.
Bye.
Likewise.
Hi.
You might want to stop the recording. Well, let's leave the meeting and then we'll.
Well, no, let's leave it on. I'll just stop the recording.
Okay.
Stop recording.